Welcome guys to this video on web design. So this is going to be our first project that we're going to be doing at home, and there'll be other exercises that we'll do in class. So for a start, what we're going to have a look at is installing a piece of software called Notepad++, and this is what it will look like when you install it. Now I'm just going to close that for now and jump onto a web browser. Okay, so to find Notepad++, do a search for that, and bear in mind that this is a Windows only environment program. If you're using a Mac, then you'll need to download some alternatives, and there's a link to that on the OneNote that you've got access to. And a good alternative to this is something called Sublime Text. Okay, opening up Notepad++, that link takes us to here, and go to download. Okay, and eventually comes up, and click on that first link here, the installer one. When you do that, it'll download the file, the executable down here, which you can either run from there or show in folder. Okay, so there it is, and I could put that anywhere I like and then run it from there. Maybe put it into a separate drive or onto your desktop if you're into doing that. Okay, and then basically once you install it, okay, then we can start to run it. Okay, now if I fire that up, here it is. I've already got it on my start menu here. If I can't find it, just type note, and there it is. So I can either unpin from start, or if I didn't, since I've already got it there, or now I can pin it to the start. So it should be here somewhere. There it is, and I'll just move it back to where I had it before. Okay, let's fire that up. So here's our pretty blank looking document. In fact, when you start it up, you won't have that there either. Now, one thing we need to do before we start typing anything in here, we need to set up a structure where we're going to save our files. So I'm going to right click on the Windows icon, go to File Explorer, let's make that a bit bigger, go to my documents, Computer Studies 215, Level 2, and I've already got a folder here I've made called Web Design 2015. If you don't have that, you need to make one, and then let me just delete that, so go back to the start point, make a new folder and call that Project 1, and that's all we need to do at this stage inside the File Explorer. Heading back to here, okay, let's start to make our first document. Now the first thing we're going to type may look a little strange, especially if you haven't made web pages before, this thing called doctype. So to try and explain what this is about, let me just annotate the screen a little bit. Hopefully I can do that. Here's the pencil. Right, so the way that a doctype works is that this tells your browser. Now what do I mean by a browser? Something like Chrome, Internet Explorer, or Firefox. You'll have to excuse the terrible writing here. Okay, so your browser needs to know what kind of document this is. Okay, so if you want to see something on the screen eventually, so there's your screen, your little keyboard and your mouse, okay, blah blah blah. Okay, it needs to be able to know or interpret what kind of document this is. This process of interpreting it, technical name is called parsing, P-A-R-S-I-N-G, and that basically takes the code we're going to type into here, interpreted by the browser. It then sends the correct information through to the screen so it understands what to display. And a doc type, this particular one, is telling us which version of the hypertext markup language are we using. And if you use just this exclamation doc type, it means that it's HTML5, and the browser understands that. Okay, so having got that, let's move on to a bit more of our document. Right, so let's get back to putting some stuff in here. Okay, so next thing we're going to type in is HTML. Now you notice that we're putting these funny triangle brackets around it. These are called tags, and these are basically the elements of a hypertext markup language page. And what we're saying here is that, well, we're going to use the hypertext markup language for the code that's going to go in between these tags. Now the other thing I'd ask you to notice is that I seem to be typing two of these things. Now the question is, well, why would you do that? Well, that's the way that HTML commonly works. You have an opening tag and a closing one, and that's just the way the structure of it is. Okay, and then we're going to have something called the head, and let's close that. Notice how you close it with that / and then the tag mentioned again. Okay, then we're going to have the body part. Okay, and that's a pretty basic template, but we will put a couple of other things in. Every web page should have a title, so we have a title tag, and I'm going to call this, well, in fact I'm not going to call it anything. I'm just going to leave that empty for the moment, and we'll save this as a template in a moment. And one other thing that we need to specify that helps the browser interpret the page is something called the character set, and we specify that by using this thing called metadata. It's something you might have heard about in the news a few months ago, and this is the kind of data that's attached to web pages that spy agencies love to sort of mine. But this is pretty harmless. We're simply saying we're going to use this character set here. Okay, that's a pretty basic template. So let's save this. So I'm going to File, Save As. Now I need to go to where I want this to be saved. Okay, so I'm going back to here, and I'm just going to put it at this level, not inside project 1. We'll put all our projects in here, but we'll put the template outside that. So I'm just going to call this template HTML. Okay, and there's our very basic template. Okay, let's carry on now. Let's get something worthwhile into this. So back to the title, in between the opening and closing tags, I'm going to type in Project 1 Web Design 2015. Okay, now just to explain this a little bit more, this is a very common structure. 99.9% of the web pages out on the internet would have this kind of structure. So just to explain it a little bit more, and bring the pencil over here again. So we have this head section here. Now the head section is used for, as just mentioned, the title. You put metadata in there which describes your page. Who's it describing it to? Well, it's describing it to the browser, and for programs that might be sent out to mine the internet, like Google will do that to basically know what's out on the internet. So when you do a search, it can give you sensible replies. So we have our metadata, and we also have commonly styling information and links to things like your styling, but it also might be links to something like maybe a font that you want to use on your website. So these are pretty common things that you put into the head, and the head starts here, and in our case it ends here. Then we have the body part. Now the body, okay, this is where we basically put the structure of our web page, and we use tags to do that. And tags are those things that are between those triangle brackets. So for example, body is a tag, and they commonly have an opening and a closing one. You do get a few, like this one at the top there, that didn't seem to have a closing tag, and there are some like that. They're known as self-closing ones. Another example would be where you want to put a line break, and that looks like that, and we'll see that when we create our page in a moment. Okay, so the body used for the structure, and we're going to use tags to commonly create that structure. And notice that everything goes between HTML tags, otherwise the browser won't know what language basically you're using. So the doc type together with this helps the browser know what language we're using. Okay, let's motor on. Okay, so let's get into putting something into the body part then. Well, the first thing we're going to use is a heading, and H1 is a heading tag. There are H1 through to H6 heading tags, and they should be used basically in the order in which the size of the headings will be, with H1 being the biggest, H2 the next biggest, H3 the next biggest, and so on to H6 being the smallest. So it's called a hierarchy of headings, and that is something that you should bear in mind when you're creating your pages. Right, so the next thing, we're going to put a paragraph in here, P for paragraph. And to save a little bit of time, I'm going to cut and paste some text over, save you watching me type. Okay, now this is run off basically almost the end of the page there. Let me just make sure that that is going to wrap around. It will, in fact. In fact, I might just make this a little less wide as I'm developing this. Something like that will be good. And then we need to have the closing tag. Forgive my terrible typing. Alright, now you should pause this video, put in some sort of introductory paragraph, okay, and then we'll carry on. Now I'm commonly going to cut and paste some text over. It's just going to save me and you some time here. So another paragraph here. We also review some of the building blocks of HTML, it says. Okay, and that's our first two paragraphs. Control S for saving. Well, we haven't, remember this is saved as a template, so in fact that'll be a really bad thing to do at this stage. Okay, so don't do Control S, go File, Save As, and let's go to Project 1, and we're going to save this as index.html. And you may be wondering why index. Well, I think I'll leave that explanation for another time, maybe in class. But for now, let's just call it index here. And Control S now is a shortcut for saving. Let's have a look and see how this looks. Now with Notepad++, you can launch in a variety of browsers here. Okay, and I'm going to launch in Chrome, which I find to be a good development tool for making web pages, and this is how it's looking. You may be wondering, why is the Project 1 so much bigger and bold, and who decided this particular font and font size? Well, these are the defaults for the browser, If you don't specify styling, the browser puts some default styling in, and this is what we're seeing here. So this is the default for an H1 according to Chrome, and this is the default font and font size for paragraphs. Okay, so let's zoom back to here. Okay, let's have a look at some other common tags. Okay, the one I'm typing at the moment is something called an unordered list. Now, we should always make sure that with Notepad++ we close that. In fact, for any time you develop your web page, make sure that if you put an opening tag, you close it, even if we're going to put things in between. And I am going to put some things in between, some things called LI. Now, I think it'll become clearer as to what these are if I just get you to type in what I'm typing in here, and we'll put a couple more in. In fact, I'll copy and paste those over. Just want to line those up just so it looks neat. It won't actually influence the way it looks if you don't have it all lined up, but it looks a lot neater like that. Okay, and let's run that again. Right, so here we have these bullet points, and this is what an unordered list does. It makes a list of things, but it puts a bullet point here. Okay, now can you have things other than bullet points? Well, yes, we can, but we've got to use some special styling information to do that. And if we go and have a look here, so each of the bullet point items were these list items, so LI for list item. Okay, and let's put a little paragraph in here. And close that paragraph. Okay, I'm going to put another list item in. I'm going to cut and paste this over again, and I just want to explain a little bit what's going on here. Hopefully my zoom tool is working. No, it's not. Let's see if I can just run that up. Okay, and that's not working for me at the moment, so okay, let me see if I can just highlight it. Okay, so notice here we're inside this list item. If I run this, and if you're going to run it, okay, yeah, I needed to have saved it first, otherwise it just doesn't appear properly. So save that and then launch in Chrome. Right, notice how I wanted to get this thing to appear like a P tag or like a UL tag. The problem, if you put that into a web page, it's going to interpret it as a P tag, so it won't actually appear. So the way to get around that is to use this funny looking symbols. So let me just explain what that's about again. So this here is an ampersand symbol, and an and symbol I should say. And am I writing that correctly? No, I'm not. So let me try that again. It's a sort of and symbol, and it's on the same key on your keyboard as the number 7. So it's a very bad and there, but then LT. And when the browser comes across that, it interprets as a less than symbol. And then if we do another and GT, this is interpreted as a greater than symbol. So that's what will appear on the page. So this here, as you might have seen, will appear like that with the P in the middle there. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. Okay, so going back to where we were, okay, I need you to insert those 4 list items in this unordered list. And while we're at it, let's do an ordered list. So an ordered list would be OL for ordered list. And then we once again have a list item. So I'm going to be pretty boring here and simply call this first item, close my list item, and let's do a couple more. Now I'd love it if I could find a little plugin for Notepad++ that automatically closes some of these tags when you make them, sort of a bit like what Dreamweaver can do. And I'll still have a look and see if there's such a plugin on the internet for that. I haven't found it yet. Okay, so let's close the unordered list. Really, I should have done that when I made the opening tag. Okay, let's save that, Control S, and let's run that. Okay, so as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3 here. So this is an ordered list. Notice that I didn't actually type the 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's automatically done when you are making an ordered list, and we have 3 items. Okay, just a couple more things here. Let's have a look at the different sizes of these headings, H1 through to H6. Okay, so I'm putting in here, okay, so just a paragraph saying we're going to have a look at the different sizes and some paragraphs. And notice here we're using H1 all the way down to H6 here, that and less than and greater than to get the appearance anyway of the H1 to H6 tags. Okay, and let's save that, give that a run. Okay, as you can see, here are the different sizes of our H1 to H6, all of which can be overwritten later if we use some other styling information. But that's the defaults for now. Bit of a reminder about that. And let's finish this off with a little quote from Mark Twain, who was a famous American author who wrote such novels like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, which you may or may not have heard of. So this is simply another paragraph. Below we'll put a quote from Mark Twain, famous American author, and let's use some tags called block quote. Now you might be picking up that tags are simply a way of telling the browser what kind of things we're putting on our page, and later on we'll see that we can target any of these particular tags using styling information. Now inside here, what I've done is I've put a block quote opening tag here, and you can see the closing one here. Also, I've put in a BR tag, which is a break, because I wanted the words Mark Twain to be underneath the quote. So this is a line break here, not a paragraph break, a line break. I've also got these EM tags. Now EM is short for emphasis. So let's go and have a look and see how that looks. Save your file, then run it. Okay, let's scroll down here. So here's our block quote. Notice how by default it's indented. Okay, and Mark Twain's on a new line because we had that BR break tag, and then we had the emphasis around Mark Twain, so it's appearing in italics, which is the default thing that the EM tag does. Okay, and that's just about it. Let's put one last paragraph in there. Okay, that's all for now. Okay, so make sure you save that, create that, and what I'm wanting you to do is to upload this into OneNote. So you'll need to save that, which we've already done. Okay, and then to get that into OneNote, you need to open up this Level 2 Computer Studies SWA 2015. and then you need to find your particular or you'll see your particular folder, which you might have already done there. So at the moment Aaron's only got these sort of default ones here, and what Aaron would need to do is to create a new section called web design, which I will do for him. So that's that page, and let's right click on that and rename that as web design. In fact, this one here we should be calling project 1. Okay, and then inside that I need Aaron and the rest of you guys to save this file here. So how to do that? Well, one way would be to go to File Attachment, browse to where you save your work, find the project 1 file, and then we're going to insert it as an attachment. Okay, and that will mean something I can come and have a look at. Alright, so let me just delete that so Aaron doesn't get a head start on the rest of you guys, but I'll leave that set up for him here. Okay guys, we'll catch you in class, and for tomorrow night you need to be doing project 2.